Inventor of new cocktails. What is your name, please?
My name is Joe Gilmore.
My name is Joe Gilmore.
My name is Joe Gilmore.
Only one of these men is the real Joe Gilmore. The other two are imposters and will try to fool this panel. Tom Poston, Robin Bain, Don Amici, and Betty White on To Tell the Truth. And here sitting in for Bug Collyer is the star of Play or Hunch, Merv Griffin.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here. To Tell the Truth is brought to you this week by Aerowax, made with natural wax for a shine that mops back naturally. Aerowax. Well, panel, I always get a great kick out of watching you at home. It's a pleasure to be among the living here tonight. I'm sure we're going to give you a good time, and particularly a rough time. They promised me that. Robin, I understand this is your first time on the panel.
I'm right with you, Merv.
Good. I'm first
We're
time
together.
over here.
We'll sink together.
We'll lean together, I can promise you that. So, panel, please open your envelope, take out your affidavit cards for the first time, and follow along as I read. I, Joe Gilmore, am a bartender. I have mixed drinks for such people as President de Gaulle, Bing Crosby, Sir Winston Churchill, Cary Grant, and many others. To honor important people and events, I often create special cocktails. Among these have been the Missouri Mule, the Royal Arrival, Fourscore, and the Abbey Bells. I'm here in the United States to pick up new ideas for drinks that I can take back to England. I am the head bartender in the famous American bar of the Savoy Hotel in London. Signed, Joe Gilmore. Panel, these three gentlemen all claim to be Joe Gilmore, master mixer. So let's start the questioning with, and for no particular reason, Betty White.
Well, I was your friend up until then. Thanks a lot, Merv.
Lacaille.
Number one, what is a vermouth cassis?
It's a dry vermouth and cassis.
Number two, what is the cassis part?
The cassis is the mixer.
Number three, what is red snapper?
Red snapper is a Cinzano with a gin.
Number one, what is a red snapper?
I don't know.
Number two, do you know?
It's a fish as far as I know. I don't think it's
I can't quarrel with you there. Number three, how many stories in the Savoy Hotel in London?
Well, there are two levels. There's the new building and the old building, and altogether there must be about 12. Each section is about 8 stories high.
Tom Poston?
Thank you, Merv. We're in this together, boy. Number one, what is falernum?
I don't know.
Do you know number two?
No, I don't.
Number three, do you know what falernum is? That's
No.
funny. Number one, how far is the entrance of the old Savoy from the street?
Oh, about 200 yards.
Number two, do you agree with that?
About the same, yes.
Number one, what is the street that the Savoy entrance is on, the old Savoy?
The old Savoy is on the embankment.
Number two, is that correct?
Yes, the old Savoy. You're probably thinking of the Strand side.
Thank you. Number three,
Robin?
Number one, where do you get your ideas for new drinks?
They just come to me.
Number two, how do you get your ideas?
They're invented.
Number three,
Well, I'm in the American bar, and I study the tastes of Americans principally, and Germans, certain other continentals who frequent my bar, more than English people do on some occasions.
number two, what is a pink lady made out of?
The Pink Lady is made of grenadine, and gin is the prime base.
And what's the pink part?
The pink part's the grenadine.
Don Amici.
Number one, what is the name of the Bartenders Association in Europe?
The United Kingdom Bartenders Guild.
The United Kingdom?
Bartenders Guild.
I'm talking about for all of Europe.
I'm not quite sure.
You wouldn't know. Number 2, would you know the chief barman at the Georges Cinq in Paris?
At the Georges Cinq, I believe, is René Lambert.
Would you know number 3? Do you agree with that?
I don't remember.
Number 1?
Rudolph.
Number 2, the back of the Savoy Hotel is on what? Back's on the what?
Victoria Embankment.
Number 3, is 53 a real good year in Champagne?
Not especially.
Number 1 is...
Time's up, panel. If nothing else tonight, we've discovered what you know about good booze. It's time to vote. And I might say without consultation, mark your ballots and select number 1, number 2, or number 3. The team of challengers will get $250 for every incorrect vote. Ballots all marked? Everybody made a decision? Don, are you cogitating or have
No,
you...
I've
made your
already
decision,
marked, yes,
right?
thank you.
You always
Tom?
I'm the one. I voted for number 2. As you can easily see, I changed it. I did, but I couldn't believe that the Strand, that the Savoy, the street the Savoy entrance was on was the Embankment. And that's what made me vote for number 2, because he seemed to be right in his other answers.
Robin, what's your vote?
Well, I voted for number 1, merely because I think he has the friendliest face, and it's also a little bit red, and I think most bartenders have red faces.
All right, Don Amici, who do you think is the real one?
I voted for number 1 because he was the only one that knew the chief barman's name at the Georges Cinq in Paris.
And Betty White, your vote?
I voted for number 1. I don't have the regular thing. Somebody must be having 2 sets of them. But I voted for number 1 on the strength of his answers didn't sound like things that you'd make up. They sounded like truthful answers, but I'm taken in very easily.
Well, the minds seem to be made up here. All the votes are in. And now, that moment where we find out which one of these 3 gentlemen is head bartender at the American bar of the Savoy Hotel in London. So, will the real Joe Gilmore please stand up? Thank you, Joe Gilmore. Number 2, would you tell us your real name and what you really do?
Yes, my name is Walter Root. I'm the director of group sales, Embassy Tours, Times Square, New York.
And number 3, how about you, sir?
My name is Richard Yates, and I'm in charge of distribution for GSM Delta cars in America.
Well, there's only been 1 incorrect vote, which means a total of $250 from Aerowax. And on your way out, gentlemen, there's a gift box of fine products from the makers of Aerowax for each one of you. Thank you very much, and good night to you.
Thank you, Bob.
Now let's have our next team of challengers.
What is your name, please?
My name is Nancy Hogan.
My name is Nancy Hogan.
My name is Nancy Hogan.
Panel, please listen while I read this affidavit. I, Nancy Hogan, work in Washington and have the rather confusing title of Administrative Assistant to a Special Assistant to the President of the United States. While my duties sometimes include borrowing pictures from the Smithsonian Institute and helping to redecorate the cabinet room, my main function is being Girl Friday to the President's cabinet. I notify the members of the meeting schedule, assemble material for the meeting, and coordinate the agenda. I have my own office in the White House. To me, one of the most unusual things about my position is that it is the first steady job I have ever held. Signed, Nancy Hogan. Very attractive ladies claim to be Nancy Hogan, Girl Friday to the cabinet. So let's start the cross-examination with the Don Amici?
Thank you very much, Merv. Number 1, who sits to the right of the president in the meetings?
Dean Rusk.
Number 2, who sits to the left of the president?
McNamara, Defense, Secretary of Defense McNamara.
Number 3, what is your salary?
I prefer not to say.
Number 1, what is your salary?
I don't think I should say.
Number 2, you...
I cannot say.
You cannot say. Number 2, what is Mr. Rusk's first name?
Dean Rusk.
Number 3, how often do the cabinet meetings take place?
Once a week, generally.
Number 1, what are Mr. Ribikoff's, what is he secretary of what?
Health, Education, and Welfare.
Number 2, who is Secretary of Labor?
Mr. Goldberg.
Sorry, Don. Betty?
You're not half as sorry as I am. Number 3, who is the Secretary of the Interior?
Mr. Udall.
And his first name, number 1, please?
Stewart.
And number 2, what is his home state?
I would not know.
Number 3, do you know?
Kansas.
And number 1, do you know?
Arizona.
Number 2, how many full cabinet meetings has President Kennedy held since he took office, January 20th?
He will have his 5th on Friday.
And number 3, do you agree with that?
He had his 5th today.
Number 1, I'm just curious, how come this is the first steady job you've ever held?
Well, I just graduated from college, and previously I just worked for the campaign.
So start at the top and work your way down.
Tom?
Thank you, Merv. Number 1, did your job require any special training?
No, it didn't.
Number 2, is that, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Number 3?
Yes,
Is
sir.
it? Number 3, who preceded you
Who preceded me?
under President Eisenhower?
There was no one, my boss was not there under President Eisenhower.
Well, I would expect that, I guess. What's the matter? Didn't he help him in the campaign? Number 2, have you ever seen the rocker?
Yes, I have.
Who makes that rocker? Do you know, number 2?
Company in South Carolina.
Number 1?
I'm sorry, Tom. Time's up. Robin Bain?
Oh, boy. What is the shape, number 1, of the table in the cabinet room?
Well, it's an odd shape. It's sort of oblong and hexagon. It's wide at its side and narrow
And
at the
number
end.
2, how many chairs are there surrounding this table?
There are 13.
Number 3, who is the Secretary of Defense?
McNamara.
And where is he from, number 3?
He's from Illinois.
Number 2, what is President Kennedy's middle name?
Fitzgerald.
The bells are ringing, panel. And once again, it's time to vote. No consultation, please. Mark your ballots and select number 1, number 2, or number 3. Have you all marked?
No, I haven't. I tell you.
I have to wait until all ballots are marked here. Everybody set and ready? All right, Tom, for whom did you vote?
Oh, I voted for number 3, and I had to look myself. I forgot what I wrote down on there. I voted for number 3. As you can see, my reasons aren't too good. But, is it too late to change?
That's as good a reason as any. Robin, your vote went to?
Well, I voted for number 1 for the same reason that Tom voted for number 3.
Very good reason.
Don, you must have a reason.
No, actually, the only reason, well, number 3, I thought gave a couple of incorrect answers. Number 1 seemed to be the most familiar with all the things that I know about this thing called cabinet meetings in Washington, which isn't very much, I'm afraid.
Betty White.
Merv, thank you. I voted for number 1 on the strength of Mr. Udall's home state, which is Arizona.
Huh? All right, the votes are in, decisions are made. So now, once again, comes the moment, and we'll see which one of these 3 ladies is the real Girl Friday to the cabinet. Will the real Nancy Hogan please stand up? Thank you, Nancy. Number 2, would you tell us who you really are and what you do?
I'm Frances Jackson. I'm a senior at Sarah Lawrence College in New York, Bronxville.
And number 3, how about you?
My name is Ann Via, and I'm secretary to Kyle Rote, co-captain of the New York Football Giants.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Why does a professional football player need a secretary?
Because he's sports director at WNEW Radio in New York.
I see. I had visions of you running down the field with him. Well, let me see. There was only one incorrect vote, again, which means a total of $250 from Aerowax. And on your way out, ladies, there's a gift box of fine products for the makers of Aerowax for each of you. Thank you very much, and good night to you.
Thank you.
Our third team of challengers.
What is your name, please?
My name is Dr. Arthur Maxwell.
My name is Dr. Arthur Maxwell.
My name is Dr. Arthur Maxwell.
Panel, please listen while I read this affidavit. I, Dr. Arthur Maxwell, have recently returned from the scene of a most unusual scientific experiment. From a specially built barge off the Mexican island of Guadalupe, in water 12,000 feet deep, a group of scientists and oil well drillers bored a hole underwater into the crust of the earth. The experiment is called Project Mohole and will provide new evidence of the history of the earth and its internal composition. We have drilled deeper toward the center of the earth than man has ever probed before. Signed, Dr. Arthur Maxwell. All right, panel. These 3 gentlemen all claim to be Dr. Arthur Dr. Arthur Maxwell of Project Mohole. So we'll start with Tom Poston.
Thank you, Mo. Number 3, what is the most interesting specimen you have brought up so far?
The basalt rock from the bottom of the ocean.
That's the most interesting. Number 2, what is the composition of your drill point?
It was diamonds.
In what?
It was diamonds set in steel.
Have you ever, number 2, have you ever had to change that point?
Yes, we lost 2 of them opposite La Jolla, and they had to be replaced.
Was that where the drilling took place?
No, originally we made 2 tries opposite La Jolla, and we lost some drills, and then we moved south to Guadalupe.
Number 1, is the project completed?
No, it isn't. This is merely the engineering phase of the project.
Who are the, what's the name of the laborers? What do you call the laborers that help you on this project? What are they called?
Well, the laborers, in this instance, were oil well people, and they're called roughnecks.
Robin?
Number 1, what is the center portion of the earth called?
Well, it's not known for certain exactly what the composition is. However, it is called a core, and it's thought to be composed of molten rock and nickel.
Number 2, who or what was the Mohole project named after?
It was a Yugoslavian named something like Mohorovicic.
Of course, what else? Number 3, how far down is Mohole?
Mohole is about 6 miles below the ocean surface.
And number 3, why don't you drill from the continent rather than from the water?
Because under the continent you would have to drill about 3 times this deep.
I see.
Don, number 3, who is the sponsor of this project?
The National Science Foundation was a sponsor.
Number 2, what is the size of the pipe you used?
Well, they're about 60 feet long and about that big around.
In other words, what? Number 1, what inch pipe is it that you sink down into the
diameter?
earth? I beg your pardon? Pardon me?
4 inch.
4 inch. Number 3, would you agree with that?
Yes, I'd say it's about 4 inch.
4 inch pipe. Number 3, who makes the drill that you use in these experiments, these drilling?
The Christensen Diamond Company.
Number 2, how much do you drill a day? How many feet?
Oh, they made about 300 feet a day.
Number 1, what is the least number of feet ever made in a day?
Under what particular
drilling into the earth.
In the earth or in water?
Well, you don't drill in the water, do you?
This particular project we did.
Well, I'm talking, you drilled into the earth, did you not, underneath the water?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Yeah, what's the least number of feet into that you drilled in one day?
Well, approximately, if it's solid rock, it would be approximately maybe a foot per hour.
Yeah. What, Betty?
Thank you, Merv. Number 3, when you broke the bit, as number 2 said you did, how did you go about going on with the drilling? How did you mark where you had been drilling?
We just brought the whole works back and started over again. We just lost everything at that time.
Number 2, how did you mark the spot where you had been drilling?
We just pulled up and moved on.
Moved on. You didn't go back drilling in that same position again?
No, because this was just an experiment.
Number 1, what did you do about going back to drill? If you had gotten down so many feet and then had to pull a bit out, you wouldn't want to have to start all over again, would you? That's a good question. I like that one.
In this particular case, it would have been necessary to start all over again.
Why?
The bells are ringing, my friends, and it's once again time to vote. So please mark your ballots for number 1, number 2, or number 3. All ballots marked? You've all made your decision?
Yeah.
All right. Tom Poston, for whom did you vote?
Number 3, I like the answers that he gave, although I must say that they were all very well coached, as usually the contestants are, but I thought it was number 3.
Robin?
Well, I voted for number 3, too. I must admit, number 2 looks more like a scientist, but number 3 looks like he's been out in the sun, so I guess I'll vote for number 3.
Don?
I voted for number 3 also, Merv, principally because I thought his answers sounded the most sincere to the questions that we asked of him, which I'm sure were not very intelligent.
And Betty?
Well, I don't care which one it is. I think the whole concept of this experiment is about as fascinating, it's just as fascinating as the outer space thing. And I read that when they broke a bit, they had to start all over again because there was no way of marking where they were drilling. And number 1 came as close to answering that as anybody. I hope it's number 1.
The votes are in. I see you've all made your minds up. And now let's find out which one of these 3 gentlemen is the real scientist with Project Moho. So, will the real Dr. Arthur Maxwell please stand up? I got scared too for a minute there. Number 1, would you tell us who you really are and what you do, sir?
My name is Donald McNeese. I am a stockbroker with Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith.
Number 2.
I'm Dr. Lincoln Harder, Vice President, Wagner College, Staten Island.
Well, once again, there's only been 1 incorrect vote, which means a total of $250 from Aerowax. And on your way out, gentlemen, a gift box for each one of you of fine products from the makers of Aerowax. Thank you very much and good evening to you. Well, panel, I promised you a rough time tonight, but you gave us a rough time. You did mighty well. And I might add here that Robin Bain, for your first time on To Tell the Truth, you got all correct answers. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Neil.
Very nice job. Panel, it's once again time to say good night, and I thank you all for being so kind.
I think Robin's disgusting.
Wait a minute. All right.
Here, girls. The program is to tell the truth. Thank you all. Good night to you, panel.
Thank you, Merv.
This is Merv Griffin saying good night for Aerowax, and I'll see you all tomorrow on Play Your Hunch, incidentally. And as Bug Collyer always says, what does Bud Collyer always say? Hello, panel, and how are you?
To Tell the Truth is a Mark Goodson, Bill Codman production.
The name in our mailbox is Porter.
To our friends, we're Pete and Gladys.
And we're at home next on most of these stations.
Drop in.